the Pioneer viewers, how are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you reports on Russia-Ukraine war, and we will soon share the latest developments with you. As we have often stated in our previous reports, defense units are as important as offensive units, and during the war, if you rely on offensive power, you will inevitably face a major disaster. And so, during the Russian-Ukrainian war, the Russian army based its entire strategy on having more offensive power. But this was a big problem because the Ukrainian armed forces repeatedly broke through the weak Russian defenses. Recently, Russia's air defenses were once again breached by the Ukrainian armed forces, and as it is known, there is an ongoing operation of the Free Russian Legion. Russia is experiencing great fear because of this operation, and the Ukrainian armed forces are supporting this operation with drone strikes and missile attacks. According to the latest reports, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to hit a Russian airbase recently. So, what are the developments related to this incident? Let's analyze it together. Before starting our report, I need to make a small reminder. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all of your comments on our videos, and I personally respond to them. Please continue to express your opinions about our content in the comments. Let's start if you are ready and the Pioneer reports. Well, the biggest war of the century is raging in the center of Eastern Europe, and the Ukrainian armed forces are working hard to end the unjust occupation of the Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainian armed forces are not alone in this struggle, and the Russian citizens who have still not lost their existential humanitarian qualities are also acting together with the Ukrainian armed forces. The operations of the Free Russian Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, which we have been covering frequently in recent days, should also be considered in this context. Both groups are still on the territory of the Russian Federation, and they are giving Russia a really difficult time, and the Russian army is still unable to establish control over its own territory. Recently, there have been an increase in the unmanned aerial vehicles activity by the Ukrainian armed forces, and this is very important at this time because the Russian defense is already psychologically shattered. And further continuation of this would give the Ukrainian army an incredible advantage. And it is very important that the Russian defense, which has been hit hard at many points in the Mazar versus more blows. And if the Ukrainian armed forces can continue this strategy, they will have a huge advantage. In recent days, unmanned aerial vehicles of the Ukrainian armed forces have once again entered the airspace of the Russian Federation. And the target of the unmanned aerial vehicles of the Ukrainian army was the Eagles military airbase of the Russian army. At the time of the attack, there were Tu-160 and the Tu-95 MS bombers of the Russian air forces at the Eagles military airbase. And according to our sources in the region, loud explosions were heard in the vicinity of the Eagles during the attacks. Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles easily penetrated the Russian air defenses. With the attacks of the Ukrainian armed forces, there was a great panic in the region. And according to some sources, there was even an incident during the operations of the air defense systems. And it is reported that an object hitting the Engels military airbase was launched by the Russian air defense systems. It is not possible to confirm this claim at the moment. However, similar situations have happened before, and the Russian air defense systems are indeed in a very serious weakness. Despite all the claims of Russia, it seems quite impossible that Russian air defense systems, which cannot protect the Russian airspace, have once again hit Russian territory. So there is another remarkable point about this attack: the silence of the Russian administration. As I have just stated in many times in our previous reports, the Russian leadership usually plays the silence card when it comes to attacks with heavy damage. This shows that the Russia's losses are serious, and we've seen similar situation in the past with the Ukrainian army's attacks on the Crimean Peninsula, attacks on the Black Sea Fleet, attacks on the Kerch Bridge, and the list goes on. In not too distant past, during the Free Russian Legion offensives that began in recent weeks, the Russian leadership used a similar tactics and played a silence card. However, local sources reveal the failure of these tactics, and according to many local sources, the Russian people are deeply disturbed by this policy of silence. However, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and his interesting preference seem to have little intention of changing. So it's known whether there was a heavy damage during the attack on the airbase. However, Our sources in the region report that the probability of a loud explosion is quite high, and the people of the region are angry because recently almost every point on Russia's eastern border has been targeted by the Ukrainian armed forces, and the Russian air defense systems are unable to counter these attacks. And not only Russian air defense systems, also Russian ground defense units and border guards are unable to withstand attacks from the Ukrainian territory. In recent days, we often hear about the operations of the Free Russian Legion in Belgorod and Kursk region. And according to reports, the Ukrainian armed forces have targeted both of these regions in recent drone strikes. Now, let's look again at the latest situations of the Legion's activities inside Russian territory. So, according to reports, the Free Russian Legion is still operating in the vicinity of Belgorod and Kursk, and there are numerous reports that some units of the Russian armed forces have been transferred from the front line to this area, but these reports are still unconfirmed, and the operations launched by the Legion has indeed come as a shock, and the Russian armed forces have still not recovered. Moreover, it is not only the Russian armed forces that have not recovered from this shock. The Russian people have not recovered from this shock either. And according to some sources, Russian citizens are divided into two. While some Russian citizens support the Free Russian Legion, others have left Belgorod and started migrating towards the Russian interior. This makes it clear that the operations of the Free Russian Legion is continuing successfully. Some Russian sources have recently interviewed local residents, and most of these sources are characterized as opposition sources. The striking point in these striking statements in these interviews is that the only common thought of the locals who are divided into two, and that the common thought is Putin's anger. Both those who support the Legion and those who left Belgorod and moved inland are united in their anger at Putin. So what do you think? Do you think the unmanned aerial vehicles strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces are effective? How do you assess the latest attacks, and do you think the Legion should continue the operation? If the Legion continues the operation, will there be new developments on the front line? Specify it in the comments, because you know that I read and I care about all of your comments.